Welcome back to my Warhammer lore. In today's video, we will be delving once again into the pantheon of the Dark Gods, this time covering the Raven, the Great Conspirator, the Changer of Ways, Tzeentch. I, of course, will be taking all of the information for this video from the latest army books, as well as the fantasy roleplay, specifically the 2nd edition, and finally, from the numerous Warhammer fantasy novels put out by the Black Library. Without further ado, let's shed our mortal coil and sail through the shifting winds of magic to the mirrored fortress and the well of fate that resides within as we cover the Changers of Ways. Tzeentch, the Deceiver, the Schemer, T'Char. These are a few of the hundreds if not thousands of names for Tzeentch. He has an infinite number of facades that he is known by and he acts through. He is an embodiment of change and also that of deceit and lies. This change could be as simple as a cocoon spawning a butterfly to a mortal ascending to demonhood. While his lies are many and unknown to all of his servants, as he above all other gods of the ruinous powers is scheming an incomprehensible web that will end with him victorious over all. There is no single depiction of the Changer of Ways, as each person that has written down what they believe to be him has a different account. Many of the ravings of these mad men that have encountered him have described Tzeentch as a huge mass of shifting colors, or a giant bird with multi-hued wings, or perhaps gangly giant with its head center square in its chest and writhing tentacles on its back, or my personal favorite, a large, slender, demonic body with hundreds of heads, each telling lies, and one, perhaps, the truth. So it is hard to say who or what Tzeentch actually is, but we do know that he resides deep in his realms of chaos, in a place called the Crystalline Labyrinth, a almost castle-like structure of shining crystals polished to a mirror sheen that confuses and drives mad all whom roam its halls. In this fortress of eldritch geometry lies a hidden library that is said to hold the collective knowledge of entire universes, as well as the fabled Well of Eternity, a literal well of time and space, where the Changer of Ways spends eons studying and collecting information, revolving fate and perfecting the outcomes of his numerous schemes. Tzeentch's domain is one of madness and knowledge, where the very fabric of reality is stretched, allowing one to perceive 9 separate dimensions at once, as the geometry of unfathomable angles and twists and shifts to colors that have no name. And at the center is the maze of Tzeentch, the crystalline labyrinth, which has no guards, the very traversal of its halls being impossible for a mortal or even most demons to make without losing themselves to madness, or their bodies being pulled apart or imploded from the shifting laws of physics on the Changebringer's mind. His halls are filled with the echoing laughter of madmen and the ramblings of the insane, as truths better left unknown are revealed and schemes far into the future are put in place. And this very chaos is apparently what Tzeentch revels in, though we will never truly know, as his ever-shifting nature makes him the most interested in the mortal plane and the most mysterious. For you never know if his plots, which often contradict one another or are self-defeating, are a means to an end, or simply the result of a mad god himself. Or perhaps his dalliances and plots are merely entertainment, and only the truly insane can fathom his true objectives. However, the Weaver of Fate does in fact have a quite extensive following in the mortal realms, as in one of the most powerful of the Chaos Gods. In fact, if legends and tellings of the Norskins can be believed, he is, or used to be, the most powerful of the ruinous powers. This was back when the Old Ones were still battling for this world, and Tzeentch was by far the greatest threat, as his magic was powerful and awe-inspiring. This made his brother gods jealous, and they plotted to throw down the Lord of Change. All of them attacked him inside the realms of chaos simultaneously, and after centuries only one challenger remained. Khorne. And after a brutal duel that lasted untold years, Khorne finally grabbed Tzeentch by his throat and cast him down, shattering him into 10,000 pieces. Each piece is said to be an individual spell that makes up all magic that has been cast or ever will be cast to this day. And Khorne took his place as the strongest of the ruinous powers that day. Despite him not being as glorious as he once was, followers of Tzeentch are often the most successful of the followers of chaos that assail the mortal realms. This is because they are the most careful, hatching plots and whispering deceits that remove enemies at far and can resort to violence or powerful magics when needed. And of course, there is this never-ending strife with the followers of Khorne. But why would any mortal choose to follow a being of pure insanity, of a living embodiment of chaos and change? It's actually more simple than you might think. Knowledge and desire, mainly. The temptations of Tzeentch. It is easy to see how the more magically inclined fall into his service, and his gifts of knowledge and spellcraft, and truths that feed the curiosity in every scholar, whether they choose to admit it or not. And he freely grants his blessings upon his followers, though they tend to take on the more mutant side of things, as he does embody change in every way. But why would, let's say, a general fall under his sway, and not mighty Khorne? Tactics. While the followers of Khorne are forces to be reckoned with in war, they are nothing compared to the strategy and underhanded tactics employed and gifted to those that desire victory at all costs by Tzeentch. And the same can be said for his actual warriors and chosen that follow the Changebringer. As they may not be as physically bloodthirsty as followers of Khorne, they more than make up for any physical deficiencies with powerful magics and augments as their weapons and armor glow with ethereal fire, and the very blessings of their patron augment their physical abilities to heights not seen in many of the other dark powers' mortal followers. A warrior of Tzeentch is a very dangerous opponent, as they often have a diverse array of attacks and defenses not common amongst the elder followers of chaos, and have the more forethought to employ said weapons at the right time to catch opponents unwary, a mistake many countless individuals have made when facing down the forces of Tzeentch. And while many warriors and generals do fall under his sway, his most potent mortal champions are those wizards, sorcerers, and enlightened folk that are tempted by his promise of knowledge and power. A chaos sorcerer under the banner of the Changer of Ways is a sight to behold, as they are considered powerful even by demon standards, and can wield the flame of change capable of corrupting and reorganizing any material it comes in contact with. A man may become some abhorrent spawn of chaos, while the grass beneath his feet becomes living tendrils, dragging creatures to a gaping maw made of stone and clay. Anything is possible. These powerful mages are known to wreak wanton destruction on the Changer's enemies, and sow discord amongst the more civilized races, for only true chaos can reign supreme. Their emissaries of the Raven also tend to find themselves in places of import, when not leading their own warband. In the north, the village shaman most certainly gives thanks to Tzeentch despite worshiping any other god, as they know he's the true source of all of their craft. And in this position of advisor, many of these champions find themselves in. Some, this is a mere stepping stone down a long line of treachery and intrigue, while others prefer the role as what better way to sow discord amongst the masses than by influence the Jarl or King or Emperor without them even realizing they are serving the great deceiver in the first place. And there are many tales of mighty champions that have brought low great forces of the Empire. One such being the Order of Light, that befell a very long thought out treachery by a powerful, now chaos sorcerer that is in the employ of Tzeentch. And while his forces are indeed numerous on the mortal plane, and treachery is, of course, their trade, this does bring us to the gifts and boons that Tzeentch bestows upon his mortal followers. Now, no two champions will ever share the exact same gift, but they do often share similar traits. For one, all followers of Tzeentch are in a constant cycle of change, whether that be physically or mentally, as they struggle with plots and shifting alliances. In this way, they embody the ever-changing nature of their god, which can often be self-defeating. Second, are given some forbidden knowledge in exchange for their service. This could be spellcraft, dark rituals for attaining power, but it could also be secrets revealed, allowing this servant to, let's say, depose a prominent member of the Church of Sigmar, or even wiggle their way into the court of Fair Bretonia. As Tzeentch is a master of deception and has ways of gathering enormous amounts of knowledge about any topic imaginable, storing it in his forbidden library. And last, and possibly one of the most potent gifts that are often bestowed on his chosen, specifically those leading his armies, is the gift of Foresight. And I'm not speaking simply of thinking ahead. I'm literally talking about the ability to see multiple threads of potential futures and manipulate events to make the desirable outcome true. This is attributed to Tzeentch's obsession with fate and staring into the well of eternity, that he can bestow a fraction of his knowledge onto his followers to further spread his plots and domination of the known world. And of course, most are gifted, or at least already possessed, a knack for deception and plots, as why else would you succumb to such a creature if it was not in your very nature? However, these mortals are by no means the only followers of Tzeentch. He also has a vast host of powerful demons, the Immortal Servants that embody the Changer of Ways, more so than anything that has ever graced the mortal plane, with bodies that vibrate in ethereal colors, almost incomprehensible to the human eye, and shifting anatomy that defies logic, and their very presence unraveling the laws of reality into pure chaos. These are the demons of Tzeentch. And whom better to start with than the Pink Horrors, the foot troops of his demonic horde. A Pink Horror is a large creature with gangly limbs, a large mouth in the center of its body that can move and shift as well as its limbs. The skin is a deep pink, and they are often depicted as laughing like madmen filled with maniacal joy as they suffuse themselves with magic, and in a way they are magic made flesh, much like all of Tzeentch's demons, which gives them reality warping abilities from the Changebringer's flame. They often throw towards their enemies, and the reaction their bodies undergo when they are mortally wounded is, let's just say, interesting. The pink flesh begins to dissolve into two horrid lumps of smaller size that take on a deeper blue tone, and two blue horrors are born to continue the fight. The blue horrors resemble smaller versions of the pink. In fact, they are identical, but tend to be more bitter in their crazed cries, adding a deeper whining note to the maddening sounds of the gathered horrors. From a Total War perspective, the Pink Horrors are an interesting unit to tackle, but nothing they've not done already. They need range, but are by no means a skirmishing unit, and so I see them kind of like Iron Breakers, or miners with blasting charges, having a short-range flame toss or fire breath attack that of course will do some kind of severe mortal damage, or maybe damage over time. Not exactly sure on the specifics of what Flames of Tzeentch should do in Total War, so I'd love to hear your thoughts if you have any. But back to the Pink Horrors. They will have a surprise, as they are not great in melee, but upon their death they will spawn a unit of blue horrors. They are better in melee and maybe even explode upon death, dealing damage to the enemy. A definite war of attrition, as horrors are known to have crazy things happen around them in the tabletop. Melee should be discouraged when facing down the hordes of Tzeentch, and this would be one way to do so. Though, more than likely, these will lack the staying power of standard troops, and I'm not sure what will fill their place. The next demons are known as flamers, or flame horrors, or simply fire demons. Much like pink horrors, they are products of pure magic and are also horrifying to see. They have tall, tubular bodies with many faces of gaping maws with pink tentacles for teeth covering their writhing skin. Their bodies end in a skirt that they use flames to propel themselves with. The two arms are more like blue trunks that end once again in an open maw that shoots out the warping flames they are so famous for. Speaking of which, these flames are the raw stuff of chaos that have similar effects on the body to that likened to warpstone. Not burning flesh, but mutating it into some horrific parody of what it once was. And unlike pink and blue horrors, flamers appear to have no intelligence of their own. Think of them almost like wild animals or natural hazards of Tzeentch's realm that he occasionally sends into the service of his greatest champions. Now, in Total War, I picture these flamers as being a strange, monstrous skirmish cavalry, but it does also talk about how fast they are. However, I think they should have relatively short range, something similar to, let's say, pistoliers, possibly with the same firing power, or maybe something like the grenade versions, the Outriders. Regardless, in my mind, they fill the role of skirmish cavalry and could be easily implemented on CA's part, as there shouldn't be that much difficulty porting in this demonic unit, and I see no reason why they shouldn't be there. The next demons are known as Screamers, or sometimes as Sky Sharks. They are large disc-like creatures resembling a purple manta ray, with sharp purple horns and barbs all around their bodies. Their tail, which drags several feet behind them, ends in a horned mace-like appendage. They spend their time flying high through the sky. They are relatively mindless creatures, but are driven to bouts of hunger or frenzy when they sense large amounts of emotion. They are drawn to these places, and they quickly fall upon the mortals that produce this sweet music as they dive and tear through their physical form, capturing the very soul stuff and offering it somehow to Tzeentch. Often these creatures are not under the influence of a warband, but will follow one drawn by the prospect of great emotion and death, where they will dive into the enemies and collect souls from their mortal form. In a way, they serve almost like carrion. Now, in Total War, if these are to be included, which I think they probably should at least make an attempt. First, I think they should have a low morale, because they are almost wild monsters, but should function as hard-hitting flying shock cavalry. Maybe with an emphasis on infantry as opposed to large units, since they would be the easiest to snack on. And I would love to see Frenzy, of course, as a buff, and if that is too powerful, perhaps, and even though I don't enjoy this, perhaps they will give them the rampage mechanic that some of the lizardmen have, meaning that you can lose control of said units if they drop too much in morale, making them a hard-hitting but easily misused unit. And I think there should be quite a bit of skill that comes into playing a Tzeentchian army. There's a lot of synergy that should be had, and a lot of tactics that need to be considered. Something that Tzeentch himself would be proud of. The next demons in the magical hordes of Tzeentch are simply known as discs of Tzeentch, which in a way are just alterations of the Screamers, as these in fact were at one point Screamers that had their form changed by a sorcerer of Tzeentch to serve as mounts for his chosen. However, they are still sentient, and while they mostly only obey Tzeentch completely. The same cannot be said for their riders, which has led to many of their deaths. In addition to their normal appearance, they also seem to have some unique traits, be that a metallic hue or a series of teeth-like appendages that swallow attackers whole, making them great for sorcerers looking to discourage a close-quarter fight. They are drawn to conflict and actively devour lesser demons and mortals to deliver to their patron to change when not being sent into the mortal plane as powerful mounts for his chosen, most likely and mostly known as thrall wizards. These mounts serve as both an excellent means of transportation and defense, as they allow the rider to fly high above the battle lines, picking out important targets and shifting troops as necessary. And while they are capable fighters in their own right, protecting the more squishy wizard behind a living metal disc hungry for souls. In Total War, I see these as simply mounts for Tzeentchian sorcerers. That should be a given. I would, however, also be interested in maybe seeing a contingent of almost heavy cavalry, perhaps being ridden by a small collection of thrall wizards. Maybe not, but if they did, they'd operate similarly to skirmishing flying cav, kind of like pterodons, that are decent at defending themselves and picking off weak targets. Or you could have just a unit of just them by themselves, and they would function as just a monstrous, heavy-hitting unit, almost like a shock cavalry, but flying. Think of hippogriffs. And finally, the last demon, and most powerful, the Lord of Change. These greater demons, in their natural form, resemble large carrion birds, with piercing, all-knowing eyes. Their skin can be in any number of colors, but their body appears frail despite their prestigious size. But they are anything but frail. Upon their back, a set of glowing multicolored wings shifts from hue to hue in a spectrum of change, and they often are depicted clutching some arcane staff. They are the most powerful magic users of all demon kind, capable of great destruction and bestowing powerful boons and aid to those that seek it. For they, much like the mortal champions of Tzeentch, have been gifted with the ability to see the future and past, as well as being capable of discerning another creature's wants, desires, wishes, and even their fate. However, the Lords of Change are as cunning as their master, and have mastered deceit, using the promise of power to many seeking champions to twist their wishes to their own, because they also, like Tzeentch himself, are ever plotting and using those around them as pawns in some great scheme. While it is not unheard of for some seeker to outwit one of these creatures, it is rare, for even they cannot see into each other's goals, that which they wish to be kept secret, and it is said that their very gaze is enough to crush a mortal's will as they lay bare their fate and deliver false prophecies. It is also of some note that the Lords of Change do not have to assume their true appearance. They can, through magical means, take on the form of anything or anyone. There is a detailed account of one of these creatures hiding themselves inside the body of a mortal champion of Tzeentch without his knowledge, and capitalizing on some scheme after leaving him. There is also, of course, the most famous one, and Mr. Drogor Zardun, a dwarf said to hail from Carrick Zorn that may or may not have fanned the flames of the War of the Beard that sundered the alliance between the dwarves and the elves oh so long ago, and may have brought low the Warhammer world in general. But as far as Total War is concerned, the Lords of Change should certainly be leaders of his demonic hordes. There is no other place for them. And ironically, this is one of the few demons that we already have in-game, so there's no reason for them not to be included. This is in the form of Sarthoriel the Everwatcher, the narrator of the series, whom, spoiler alert, challenges the Everchosen in the Chaos campaign, and can be played as in multiplayer. Now, I of course am hoping for a full workover of Tzeentch magic, perhaps a collection of select spells unique to each lord, which would make it interesting just to mix things up for these great lords of change. I picture them as being powerful casters and decent in a fight if the Everwatcher is an example of what they should be capable of, with massive missile resistance, ward saves, making them surprisingly tanky, and unless you are fully prepared to bring down one of these creatures, you will find your army wanting, as they can pull the tide easily on their own. They are very powerful creatures and should be treated as such. And, unfortunately, that is all of the Demons of Tzeentch, the Changebringer, that I have a decent knowledge of. That does not mean that there are not more Scions of Change out there, only that these are the most important and possibly the ones most likely to make the initial cut into Total War Warhammer 3. Now, I do see several issues with a Tzeentch-themed army, in that they completely lack a front line and are heavily reliant on magic as their primary damage source. This would not work extremely well in the current Total War setup, but perhaps their units can have bounce spells in place of the limited winds of magic, or maybe even they get access to more winds or a larger reservoir of some kind as an army total. And while they have no dedicated skirmishers, they do possess plenty of fast-moving skirmishers, and I think that their lack of powerful foot soldiers can be an extreme hindrance in their capability of defending themselves against many other factions. Now, I do believe this could be addressed with a few subtle changes, possibly to Pink Horrors themselves, perhaps adding in some other units at their disposal to pad out the ranks and fill in some of the missing gaps. And if they do so, I do think that they will be a powerful force and a welcome addition to Total War Warhammer, of course, 3 when it is released. I hope you enjoyed the video thus far, and if I have missed something that you feel is important about the Changer of Ways, do make sure to leave it down in the comment section, and I will attempt to add it into a future video if I can. Now, if you have not yet, do make sure to like the videos and subscribe to the channel. Both help me out tremendously, and will keep this content coming in the future. As well, I would like to say thank you to all of my loyal thick boys out there, and to all of you that have supported me over the years simply by watching. Oh, and if you haven't already, you should definitely check out the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay game that I and a few of my friends have been playing on the channel for some time now. It is titled The Rise of the Forsaken. If you like Warhammer and storytelling, it should be right up your alley. Just don't let your kids watch. Let's just say it's got a few adult themes. As usual, guys, I have been Jumbo Thick. This has been the lore of Tzeentch. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all in our next lore video. Have a good day.